Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, President Trump pushes his peace agenda with Syrian President Al-Sharaa behind closed doors. And Prime Minister Netanyahu meets with Jared Kushner about the 200 Hamas terrorists in tunnels inside Gaza. Plus, lethal weapons of mass instruction. David Bedein brings a shocking report about the unchanging school curriculums in Gaza that will continue to incite students to kill Jews. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. For the first time ever, a Syrian head of state visits the White House, marking a major turnaround in U.S.-Syrian relations. In Israel, U.S. Special Envoy Jared Kushner is meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu over the future of Gaza. Here's the latest on these and other stories. The U.S. military recently released this video of Al-Sharaa playing basketball with CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper, a sharp contrast with his past as an al-Qaeda commander with a $10 million bounty on his head for killing U.S. and allied troops. The White House hopes Al-Sharaa can play a key role in President Trump's vision of Middle East peace. Prior to the visit, 100 faith leaders signed a letter hoping President Trump can use his meeting with Al-Sharaa to protect Christians and Druze in southern Syria.
Back in July, and I'm sure there's you'll be showing the footage here, but back in July, there was an October 7th style attack in Sweden. Many thousands were killed. Unspeakable horrors that were conducted there, Chris. Grandparents and their grandbabies thrown off buildings, children raped, old people burned, people's hearts ripped out. I mean, the most horrific, barbaric stuff that you can possibly think about.
Religious advocate Matthew Farasi signed the letter. He says the situation in Syria is now desperate.
They're being starved, they're being murdered, they're being deprived of water, they're being deprived of medical supplies. And so now Sweden, a city of between 700 and 750,000 people, is surrounded by military forces, and you can't get in or out, and they have a chokehold on the aid.
The faith leaders are asking Trump to intervene.
And so the letter is asking for a humanitarian corridor from Hadar, which is near the Israeli border, to Sweden, to allow the free flow of humanitarian aid back and forth. We know that you have leverage over the president of Syria, so we encourage you to use that leverage to tell him, hey, you've got to stop this activity, and you've got to respect religious freedom in Syria.
On Sunday, the remains of IDF soldier Hadar Golden came home to his family in a Jewish burial after 11 years.
In August of 2014, after they kidnapped Hadar from us, and we shouted that we must not leave Gaza without bringing Hadar back, it was obvious to us that the state of Israel would not leave soldiers behind.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Golden's return.
We said at the beginning of the war that we would return all the hostages without exception. 255 were kidnapped, including 4 who were kidnapped earlier. We will bring them all back.
President Trump called Syrian President Al-Sharaa a tough guy from a tough place and a very strong leader.
I liked him. I get along with him, the new president of Syria. And we'll do everything we can to make Syria successful, because that's part of the Middle East. We have peace now in the Middle East, first time that anyone can remember that ever happening.
Trump lifted decades-old sanctions on Syria after former al-Qaeda terrorist Al-Sharaa toppled Syrian President Bashar Assad last year, ending the brutal Assad regime. Trump says he also wants to see a lasting peace between Syria and Israel.
We're working also with Israel on getting along with Syria, getting along with everybody, and that's working amazingly.
In an interview with Fox News, Al-Sharaa said he doesn't see Syria entering the Abraham Accords with Israel in the near future.
Syria has borders with Israel, and Israel occupies the Golan Heights since 1967. We are not going to enter into negotiation directly right now. Maybe the United States administration with the President Trump will help us reach this kind of negotiation.
Known in the Bible as Bashan, the Golan Heights was given to the half-tribe of Manasseh. Israel gained control of the Golan Heights in the 1967 Six-Day War. During his first term, President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Al-Sharaa said he and the president talked about changing Syria's perception and role in the Middle East.
We talked about the president and the future. We talked about the investment opportunities in the future in Syria, and so that Syria is no longer looked at as a security threat. It is now looked at as a geopolitical ally, and it's a place where the United States can have great investments, especially extracting gas.
According to reports, Syria confirmed it would join the global coalition against ISIS, though no announcement has yet been made. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Trump's envoy Jared Kushner met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the ceasefire agreement. Kushner is leading talks to secure safe passage for about 200 Hamas terrorists trapped in tunnels on the Israeli side of the Yellow Line. Israeli government spokeswoman Shosh Bedrosian refuted Turkey's claim that they are civilians.
And Turkish propaganda cannot change the fact that they are terrorists. Terrorists who are with Hamas. Even Hamas admits its tunnels are for its terrorists and not for its people.
As details are being worked out for an international security force in Gaza, Netanyahu has stated that Turkish troops will not be included. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Our next guest calls the school curriculums in Gaza lethal weapons of mass instruction. He's been sounding the alarm on this for decades and was recently privy to U.S.-Israeli planning sessions on education in a post-war Gaza. And after the meetings, he's still sounding the alarm. David Bedein, thanks for joining us. You've been tracking the curriculum for the Palestinian Authority for decades. You made a presentation to CENTCOM.
Right.
What did you tell them?
I told them about the curriculum, the first curriculum ever to promote first-degree murder as the focus, and the delegitimization of the Jews in the land of Israel, the importance of getting rid of them, and it's all in their textbooks. We got the textbooks directly from the Palestinian Authority. The most recent textbook I picked up is this is from the 5th grade, and it's dedicated to the memory of Dalal al-Mughrabi, a woman who murdered 36 Jews, including 13 children, on a bus. We brought them a study of 42 school books. We showed exactly what's going on in the school books. We try to maintain our objectivity, and they're very clear in their message. And what's also important, the vast majority of the school teachers are Hamas. Israel's in the midst of a war against Hamas, and now you're going to hand over the schools to Hamas? And we're asking these questions which don't get answers.
And you presented this to CENTCOM. What was their reaction?
They wanted to have the next speaker.
Meaning?
Meaning, thank you very much. We have other things to do.
Do you think they'll taking this seriously, or they will want to make sure that the Palestinian Authority makes these changes?
I don't see them reacting in any way. This is going to be a job for the U.S. Congress to follow through. Many appearances at the House Foreign Relations Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where we've found people on both sides of the spectrum to be interested. The GAO, the Government Accounting Office, conducted a complete study of these school books and found the same conclusions we came to. So Senator James Risch, who is now the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, this is in his lap. Very important that this be mentioned, this be used, because this is the future. The future is in education. And if education is neglected, we have failed.
Again, you think the CENTCOM is not taking this seriously?
No, it took it seriously enough to send a delegate to my office to make sure that this was a new school book. But this is not on the agenda in any way, shape, or form. This morning I spoke to the people who are in charge of COGAT, which is the Israel Civil Administration, and they would not give me any commitment whatsoever on this issue because they feel they're under pressure from the Americans just to keep the process going. This is a process of the lethal weapons of mass instruction, which have to be stopped. Remember, the Gaza and Judea-Samaria have been under Israeli control since 1967. I started this project in 1987, and right away I was told by the representatives of foreign countries and by the Israel military authorities that they have to do two things: check out the school books and check out the teachers to make sure that they're not terror-oriented.
It seems like Palestinian Authority has been chosen to be the entity in a post-war Gaza, but with reforms. Do you see any evidence of the Palestinian Authority reforming?
The Palestinian Authority's most important aspect is Hamas. Hamas was elected in 2006 to lead the Palestinian Authority. When you talk about the Palestinian Authority, you talk about Hamas, and you talk about a very clear terror entity which has no precedent in world history. We've shown that Hamas took over. And this is not something on the agenda anywhere. We remember Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey 20 years ago took this very, very seriously, but it's been pushed aside. It's maybe too complicated. I'm sorry. Those who call for the murder of Jews, I'm sorry, that's not too complicated. Yeah. Very clear.
Last question, David. Your final takeaway. What do people need to know?
What people need to know is that the situation is a matter of premeditated murder, and that's the focus of their education. And we need people to say, this is not acceptable. A curriculum of war, a curriculum of murder, a curriculum promoting murder is not acceptable. You need to tell that to Congress, to President Trump, and they will listen. Because I got involved with, when Trump became president in 2017, I was able to get material right to him. He was shocked by the curriculum. Well, I want him to continue to be shocked.
David Bedein, thanks so much for joining us and exposing this. If you're in the U.S. and want to make your voice heard about this, contact your state or U.S. senator and representative and ask them to remove these violent UNRWA Palestinian Authority curricula slated to be used in all Palestinian Authority schools. What do national disasters have in common with a country's willingness to carve up modern Israel? Bill Koenig from Watch.org thinks they're very connected and made the case in his book, Eye to Eye, Facing the Consequences of Dividing Israel. He spoke with us recently about the dangers of President Trump's 20-point peace plan, which revisits the already tried idea of a two-state solution. Bill Koenig, great to be with you back here in Jerusalem. It seems like the Trump peace plan is heading towards, using the Palestinian Authority perhaps as an entity inside post-war Gaza. And so that looks like they are looking for a two-state solution.
Absolutely. And you look at his 20-point plan, I think it's number 17, talks about a future Palestinian state. But as I mentioned, a lot of us were very enthusiastic, very hopeful after the NRB in February, very hopeful with the opportunities that we were given across America and around the world. CBN was one of the fronts with us, talking about Israel's right to all of the covenant land, Abrahamic covenant land, especially Judea and Samaria. And what happened, President Trump, on the time of Rosh Hashanah, met with Arab leaders at the UN in September, and they discussed how do we get the hostages home from Gaza, what's it going to take to disarm Hamas, and President Trump committed to them that he would not allow Israel to annex Judea and Samaria. He called it the West Bank. But what that means is he promised the Arabs who showed up in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, for his big plan between Israel and Hamas and the release of 20 hostages and 28 bodies, was that he promised them if Israel wanted to annex, and what we prefer calling extending sovereignty to 134 Jewish communities, he would stop it. In other words, we've never had a president publicly state, I will not let Israel annex the West Bank, Judea and Samaria.
Why is that so important? Why is it make sure that, the hostages got out? That was a great thing, the 20 living hostages, and now we're looking at a post-war Gaza. And so to get those good things, you had to promise that. Why would you tell people there's a concern about that, a biblical concern?
Well, there's a couple things. The Bible's very descriptive, Chris, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants are to enjoy and live, and their descendants in the covenant land of Genesis 15:18. Yeah. It's very specific, the boundaries.
Would you say that if there are consequences to dividing God's land, are there blessings if you go ahead and declare this is God's sovereign territory?
I think the blessings for President Trump, if he fully backed Israel's sovereign right to Judea and Samaria and forgot about the commitment he made to the Arab countries, he would be at the midterm, his party would stay in power, and he would go down as one of the best presidents in the history. He's already done more than all presidents combined, moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, sovereignty over the Golan Heights, got out of the Iran nuclear deal. But his legacy, Chris, rides on the fact if he acknowledges Israel's sovereign right to Judea and Samaria, he will be blessed, and our nation will be blessed beyond anything we can imagine. Because Genesis 12:3, you're either blessed or cursed. And when it comes to his land, you're either blessed or cursed, and there's political and personal consequences.
Yeah, great insight. A rising star in Israeli politics shares what motivates her passion for her country and for taking on its critics. Supporters say Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel may be one of the government's most effective weapons in fighting its war against the media. CBN's John Jessup has the story.
So sorry, Kenny, there's actually alarms. We need to find cover.
Whether facing cameras,
I'm on my way now to Manchester,
or racking up frequent flyer miles on the world stage, Sharren Haskel sees herself as a defender of the Jewish state and unafraid to name Israel's greatest threat.
we understand there is a war. There's a world war between radical Islam and Western civilization values, and we know on our skin and scars what it means to fight for your freedom.
Haskel is a fresh voice tackling old questions about Israel's security, its right to self-determination, and its future place in the world. Her background includes living and working abroad, joining the Israeli border police, and becoming one of the youngest lawmakers to serve in the Knesset. While those experiences enhance her resume as a diplomat, Haskel mostly credits her Jewish heritage, which includes a grandfather who survived Auschwitz.
Go next to the wall. Everybody close to the walls.
That background explains her willingness to challenge today's media critics.
What would you do if your daughter would have been abducted into the dungeons of torture, being raped, abused, physically, emotionally? What would you do as a mother to bring her back home?
Scold world leaders for staging a walkout at the United Nations.
This is not only an insult to Israel, it is a betrayal of the very mission the UN claims to serve.
And skewer supporters of Palestinian statehood, describing it as a gift to Hamas for the October 7th attack on Israel.
The recognition of a Palestinian state by France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and others is a shameful reward for terrorism. You are either on the side of Israel or on the side of Hamas. There is no middle ground.
She's also highlighting the rising tide of anti-Semitism, recently traveling to the UK and blaming the British government for the murders of 2 people at a synagogue on Yom Kippur.
I'm absolutely appalled and heartbroken by the tragedy and the terrorist attack that happened here on the holiest day in Jewish calendar, in Yom Kippur.
In September, she welcomed the largest delegation of American politicians to visit Israel. Our cameras were there when she planted trees as a show of solidarity with each of the 50 states. That visit points to another aspect of the job, trying to convince tourists to return after COVID and 2 years of war.
For the Christian community, it's important for us that they come and they see it. They see the history. They see the archaeological sites. They see the forensic evidence of the Bible.
Haskel, once a critic of Netanyahu and a former member of his Likud party, balances her independent streak with being practical. That's made her attractive among younger Israelis. As for Israel's future in the Middle East, for her it's a mix of being realistic while acknowledging the supernatural. She points to Israel's unlikely story going all the way back to King David.
He didn't give him the kingdom. He didn't give him a crown. He gave him Goliath. And that, I think, is a point where we were given a Goliath. You have to be a realistic in Israel, and to be a realistic, you have to believe in God and miracles. Our history is full of that, and we trust him. He's got a plan for us, and he's been protecting us.
John Jessup, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Sharren Haskel is an amazing warrior. She also spoke last week to a group of Christian media from around the world, and she has a bright future in Israeli politics. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And please keep praying for Israel, the peace of Jerusalem, and for all those caught in harm's way. And that in this critical time when the future of Israel and Gaza are being determined, that Israeli and U.S. leaders will walk in wisdom and discernment. I'm Chris Mitchell for all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.